Good day. I'm Rick Randolph. I am introducing Dr. Geetha Jayaram for the SRAG Annual Symposium. And Dr. Jayaram is a professor in the Department of Psychiatry, Public Health, and Nursing at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Dr. Jayaram has presented at many national and international meetings and has lectured in the US and abroad. Her focus is to improve the quality and safety of healthcare for patients, to implement and develop programs for psychiatric care in low and middle income countries. In 1997, she established the Manshi Clinic in Mugalur, Karnataka, India, the clinic whose name means sound mind, provides mental health services to indigent women and children in southern India. The Manshi Clinic has reached 206 villages and a population of 2 million households, with outreach provided to those unable to travel to the clinic. She was honored for her work over the past 2 decades of service to those in Baltimore who are poor and mentally ill, and for establishing a network of mental health clinics for women and children in her native India with the 2014-15 Rotary Foundation Global Alumni Service to Humanity Award. Her program has since been extended into Lithuania and Kenya. And Dr. Jayaram will speak on the effects of our diet, and particularly on how a vegetarian diet can be beneficial both to the individual and to the environment. Dr. Jayaram?
Thank you, Rick, for that wonderful introduction. Good day, everybody who is on this call. I'm going to be talking about how our plate affects our planet and how that can really beat climate change. To give you a background of history, food consumption thousands of years ago included the influences of locally grown grains and pulses, practices derived from civilizations that existed in Europe, Central Asia, Africa, and now what is India. At one point in time, some of these continents were interconnected. The practices of Aryans is known through archaeological finds, literary works, and religious texts of the Hindus in India. Also, detailed excavations teach us about grains that were consumed, instruments and utensils that were used in preparation of food, and what meat was eaten as well. The earliest documented dates back to 5000 BC with details of granaries and settlement. Early explorers and traders not just documented these things, but took practices from one country, one continent to another. There is documentation of travelers from across the globe from as early as 4000 AD, or even before that, from Greece, Rome, China, with books documenting all of the ports of India from the 1st century, as well with Mexico and South America. For example, in archaeological digs, Roman wine amphoras have been found in Pondicherry, which is a town in the southern state of Kerala in India. The spice trade and the silk trade as well is thousands of years old, with the documentation of all of this trade being carried by the same route from India via the Middle East and what was then Persia to Europe. With these trades, there were also practices that influenced the movement of plants. So vegetarianism, in its earliest documented form, began around the 5th century and is really noted by Chinese emissaries from China in their writings. In fact, if you go and visit the museum at Shanghai, you will find some of these trade practices and the discourses that began in India and were communicated to other continents. Vegetarianism was strongly influenced by Buddhism. There was a transformation from the 8th to the 11th century from Hinduism to Buddhism in many parts of the world, but Buddhism made its real big stronghold in the East. So ahimsa, or non-violence, was an aspect of Buddhism that promoted not eating animal meat because they felt that harming animals was something that was not a factor that could promote spirituality. So the idea of eating something that is least harmed means you eat vegetables. Also, vegetables can be reproduced by seedlings, by seeds, and so on. In the mid-11th century, visitors from other countries remarked on the fact that Brahmins, a subsect of Indians who were the keepers of religion and spiritual services, very strongly observed vegetarianism. So the eating and seating practices, the order of food consumed, and how they are served all have their rituals, and that continues to be observed to this day. Spices that grew and were traded from India and were actually very particular to India, now found overseas, were something that promoted not just vegetarianism, but also the spice trade all over the world. Here is a list of the spices that are traditionally used in cooking. Part of it was used to preserve food materials because there was no refrigeration hundreds of years ago, and spices prevent food spoilage, but they also were used to make the food more interesting, to temper it, to actually give it fragrance, and so on. Here you see a little diagram of the whole range of diets across the world, starting from an omnivorous diet or animal-based diet to a vegan diet or completely plant-based diet. Now, much of India is vegetarian, and a lot of the United States is omnivorous. The main vegetarian ingredients consist of cereals and pulses, fruits, herbs, and medicinal plants, but also spices and other aromatic plant products that are known to have medicinal properties. The source of protein and fat is milk and ghee, butter, and yogurt, which are derived from, of course, animal husbandry, but not anything that requires killing of an animal. Vegetable sources of oil, such as sesame and mustard, are used. And Vedas, which are the religious texts of Hindus, there are many segments to the Vedas, describe the practices and methods of meal preparation, as well as the order in which to consume them, based on very clear medicinal properties. Let's look at some facts and figures. Only 2 to 3% of the United States or UK population are vegetarian. The manufacture and marketing of food products that are purely vegetarian is increasing now, not just in the United States, but in many parts of the world. Primarily, vegetarianism is very bi-coastal and tends to be concentrated in urban areas where there is a great deal of admixture of immigrants. There is a rise in vegetable consumption and decrease in meat consumption. In 2012, a survey of students from 103 universities showed that there were 43 major concerns about animals that young people expressed. And these were killing animals, using them for work, performing medical experiments on them, and so on. Particularly, cloning animals is seen as a huge affront by young persons who are very interested in climate change. With regard to the South Indian diet, you have to understand that when people say, I can't believe you eat just vegetables, I mean, how many things can you make? Trust me, food has been very rich and varied in southern India for thousands of years. It is one of the most extensive vegetarian cuisines in the world. Rice was a staple, and the steps of processing and handling paddy was manual, including the social aspects of labor and home management. So pretty much it was like a small scale industry at home that required a lot of physical activity in terms of procuring and preparing meals. Plant-derived utensils were widely used. Now you find these serving plates or cups made from banana or sal leaves that are biodegradable after use. And frankly, you can buy them from Amazon. This is what is used in India in many large gatherings so that you don't really harm the environment with anything that's plastic or not biodegradable. Today, acknowledging that plant-based biodegradable materials are climate friendly is really supported by manufacturers who are making them commercially. In fact, I actually looked at a product in India a couple of years ago that would, in a matter of days, biodegrade itself. This is just an example of the variety that is on a vegetarian plate, primarily because the essential amino acids come from various sources for a vegetarian, unlike a person who consumes meat, where those amino acids are concentrated in one product. Let's look at the arrangement of food and medicinal properties. Now, why is the meal prepared a certain way? And why are these particular preparations arranged in a certain order? So any full service might include a primary carbohydrate base with salads, vegetable preparations with or without pulses, lentils, what's called dal, extract seasoned with spices, and rarely a sweetened rice or grain item that's used for festivals that may be used as a filling or served in a thick gruel-like consistency on a banana leaf. The whole point of the banana leaf and the banana plant is every part of it that is used in the serving and food preparation industry is biodegradable. Food and temperament in ancient Hindu texts are discussed as humors in the Greek field of medicine, where there is a belief that certain foods promote certain dispositions or personalities, such as sattvic, meaning someone who's peaceful, tamasic, meaning somebody who is really fairly rich in their impulses, and so on. The amounts that you eat were also to be regulated and eaten in moderation. The food system on Earth accounts for a substantial use of natural resources and is a major contributor to the environmental degradation of planet Earth. This system contributes 20 to 30% of total anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, accounts for 70% of all freshwater use, and is a major source of water pollution. Note that 80% of the world's deforestation is related to the food system, so causing changes in land use and biodiversity loss. Besides other measures, changing in individual eating habits are deemed necessary to reduce climate change. So how do we do this? The American Dietetic Association endorses appropriately planned vegetarian diets for good health and disease prevention. The consumption of fiber in a typical American diet is very low. And in fact, green vegetables are not seen as a standard part of the cuisine. A farm with 2,500 dairy cows, for example, produces the same amount of waste as a city of over 400,000 people. Imagine that. Livestock and their byproducts account for 51% of annual worldwide greenhouse gas emissions and 65% of all human-related emissions of nitrous oxide, with 296 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. Now, people never thought of this, did they? They believe that eating beef is very important, eating pork and so on is very important, but nobody really teaches an average person about the greenhouse gas emissions of each of these industries. Scientific studies have shown that beneficial results promote weight loss, better lipid profile on a vegetarian diet, lowering of hemoglobin A1C when subjects are transitioned from a meat-based to a plant-based diet. Vegetarians have a 29% lower mortality risk from ischemic heart disease and an 8% lower risk of total cancer compared to omnivores. Studies show that wholesome plant-based diets, including vegetarian and vegan diets, can positively impact the natural environment. The Eat Lancet Commission, and yes, there is such a commission, it was a discovery for me, proposed planetary health diet, and that emphasizes whole plant foods, including fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and legumes, which dominate their recommendations. What are the health benefits of a plant-based diet? A plant-based diet appears to be beneficial for human health by promoting the development of more diverse and stable microbial systems in your gut, in your body. Additionally, vegans and vegetarians have significantly higher counts of certain bacterial species compared to polyphenols, also abundant in plant foods. And these increase bacilli, which provide anti-pathogenic and anti-inflammatory effects and cardiovascular protection. The high fiber intake also encourages the growth of species that ferment fiber into metabolites as short chain fatty acids. The positive health effects of them are myriad, including improved immunity against pathogens. So why go veggie? A vegetarian diet includes vegetables and fruits, grains and pulses, nuts and seeds, sometimes eggs, dairy products, and honey. And yes, there are vegetarian eggs. Eating a vegetarian diet means 2.5 times less carbon emissions than a meat diet. A chicken breast, for example, takes over 542 liters of water to produce. That could fill up your bathtub 6.5 times. By eating a vegetarian diet for a year, you could save the same amount of emissions as taking a small family car off the road for 6 months. There are more facts. Vegetarians also are more likely than meat eaters to consider a broad range of ethical criteria across their shopping baskets, such as recyclable packaging, sustainable production, fair trade, carbon rating, food miles, and also natural, low-fat, whole-grain organic food. Although it is a sad statement that individuals with higher income are more likely to be vegetarian, and that definitely needs to be changed, vegetarians are more likely to watch the impact the food has on the landscape where it is produced. So what are our conclusions? Climate change is critical. This is an undebatable fact. There are many approaches to reducing the negative impact of climate change. One approach is on the individual level regarding the purchase, processing, and consumption of food items that are both healthful and cause the least amount of greenhouse gas emissions, reduce food waste, and promote health. So, final words, go veggie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geetha. We have a few questions we'd like to bring up to you. Do you see a role for cell-based meat alternatives in the human diet?
Yes, now there are numerous soy products that taste like meat, look like meat, and can be used as a substitute for meat in your diet that clearly reduces the health risks of eating a large amount of red meat.
Okay, thank you. And how confident do you feel in the observational studies on red meat and human health? It's hard to study some of these things in a real rigorous manner, but you know, people have done as well as they can. How confident do you feel in those studies?
There are many nutritionists who've done very detailed, well-conducted studies. Now, I have to have a disclaimer here. I'm not a nutritionist, and I don't do that research. I've only reviewed what the research has been. To have it published in a highest quality journal like the Lancet, the studies have to be very thoroughly done, very clearly peer-reviewed. So I would say that those studies that I looked at certainly were of the highest quality.
Thank you. And how much more do people need to eat if they are not eating meat protein? How many more calories?
They don't have to eat more calories. They just have to choose calorie substitutes that are protein-based. So for example, a handful of peanuts, which in India is called a poor man's protein, is a protein source. Yogurt is a protein source. If one doesn't eat yogurt, there are other plant-based protein products that are soy-based products. Pulses and beans and lentils can be used in various combinations for a protein source. To give you an example, red lentils contain in some types of lentils more protein than meat sources.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we have one more question coming in. Yes, if agriculture, let's see. No, this one is actually a little more interesting. Are there more cattle in India than people?
I don't know. I'm not an authority on that. But you have to understand that cattle are seen as a protected part of the family, because if you have a cow, you have a source of income, you have a source of protein, you have a source of milk supply for your children. If you kill the cow, you eat it in one day and then it's gone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's a very far cry from what I do every day, but I've enjoyed preparing for it. Thank you very much.